It's a new day on Deep Space Nine, and Dax is trying to organize a +1 for Kira. She's being invited to dinner tonight, hosted by Dax and Worf, and all suggestions for who to bring are declined, with the final idea of Odo causing no small amount of awkwardness. Forget all of that, though, as the real plot is arriving, and via an unexpected teleport into Ops. The first reason it's unexpected is because Dax says there are no ships in range, which doesn't match what we saw in the opening shot, by the way, but let's ignore that for now. The second, and much better reason, is because the guy teleporting in is supposed to be dead. Betrayal, last seen carking it in the infirmary after being robotized, is back. He's also taking Kira hostage and wants a ship out of here. Sisko lets Odo know what's happening and to stay out of it, honest, and away Betrayal and Kira go. Except it's not Betrayal, of course, but rather evil Betrayal, his copy from the Mirror Universe, and he's here running from the bloody awful things happening over there. They're so bloody awful that he doesn't even have a working gun, something Kira knew all along and tells him as much once they reach the landing pad. He tries to bonk her on the noggin and scarp her anyway, the result of which is him lying on his arse. Not that he'd have made it far, as Odo was in the airlock. And now imprisoned, evil Betrayal explains to Kira that he got his dimension-hopping teleporter from a rebel mate, then quickly changes the topic to meeting our version of himself. Kira points out that's probably not going to happen, at least not without a Ouija board, but figuring out Kira had a connection to him prompts evil Betrayal to ask a favour and destroy the teleporter. He has no desire to be returned there, and she must understand why after visiting the place herself. Sisko's not entirely on board with Kira's decision to ignore the charges against evil Betrayal, as he's had some experience with evil versions of our lot himself. He warns her that evil Betrayal isn't the same person, but is willing to let Kira take the lead on what to do. Perhaps he understands that, roles reversed, he wouldn't have listened to anything Kira said about evil Jennifer. Kira's decision on what to do with evil Betrayal would appear to be just letting him loose. Having people stare at him causes him to ask why when he sees her on the promenade, so Kira runs through a brief history of how our Betrayal was both very religious and very well liked before he became very dead. He's amused by the idea given his own history, so Kira asks him to join her in the temple. That feels a bit too much like inviting comparisons from the crowd, and he declines. At first, anyway, as he joins her shortly afterwards and says he could probably do with whatever help he can get. A Bajoran orb is brought into the temple, so Kira explains what it is and mentions the prophets. He isn't exactly taken by the whole ceremony, but admits he's not big on belief. He turns to leave after thanking her again, only for her to invite him to dinner. The dinner in question is the one with Dax and Worf, though the latter doesn't seem impressed by evil Betrayal's story about stealing a weapon from a Klingon warrior. He changes his tune when evil Betrayal nicks his to cut dessert. Dinner went well enough, and evil Betrayal compliments Kira's friends afterwards. He has no such companions himself, not after an undefined woman carked it, and the sour note has her inviting him in for coffee. The woman, we learn, was originally someone he targeted to rob. Through whatever means, they hooked up until she got murderized in a bar fight. People dropping dead around you is something Kira can understand very well, and it's perhaps this shared experience that causes the two of them to move on to a bit of the old dirty little bastard. It's the following morning, and evil Betrayal is eating in bed, perhaps because he's not the bugger who has to clean it up. Our Betrayal would never have done so, just one of the many things evil Betrayal has learned about him and how selfless he was. Kira's sadness about the memories is pushed away by him suggesting breakfast. The rumours have already started, of course. Bashir makes an unnecessary trip to Ops to engage in the gossiping personally. Dax calls him out on it, before trying to get the details for herself when Kira turns up. She's seeing evil Betrayal again tonight, but it's not exactly a date. He expressed an interest in Bajoran religion after experiencing it, so she's arranged for him to have an orb vision. He's a bit nervous about the whole thing, which I suppose is fair enough when you're about to have a natter with gods. Vedek arrives to turn off the security around the orb, and evil Betrayal meets the prophets. Evil Betrayal isn't hungry, which is a first since arriving here. That's normal though, as orb visions can be proper fucking weird, a feeling likely amplified by the fact he apparently met this universe's version of himself. Kira stops him explaining, as such things are meant for the recipient alone. Besides, these experiences are draining, and he should go get some rest. He's reclining in the quarters he's been given when evil Kira pops out of the other room. She's here ahead of schedule to find out how the plan's going. It's also to find out about him and our version of Kira, what with the narcissism and all, but evil Betrayal is evasive. Complimenting Kira is both the right and the wrong answer for evil Kira, and her jealousy tries to make itself known through her fist. When that doesn't work, she moves on to psychology and calls him a petty thief. That is why he's here after all, to steal the orb so they can use it to control their version of Bajor through faith. The idea is perhaps less appealing now than it was when he agreed to it, hence him going to Quark's to drown his sorrows. Even that provides no peace, what with the people staring at him, and he has a good shout until Quark shoos them away. He doesn't like people bothering new customers, especially ones with such a potential for profit. See, people really did love Vedek Bareil, so much so that they'd pay to meet him, even if it wasn't actually the one from our universe. All evil Bareil needs to do is sit there and smile, then get paid. Evil Betrayal turns him down with no small amount of self-loathing at realizing he's more like Quark than our Betrayal, and not just because Quark is still breathing. It's a little later when Quark sees Kira in a cargo bay while fetching a shipment of booze. The conversation turns to evil Betrayal visiting the bar, and then Quark's opinion of him. He thinks evil Betrayal falls into the category of tormented based on his many years of watching people, something Kira attributes to the orb vision he had. That's probably why he spent a few hours sniffing around the shrine too, though Quark does note that's also how you'd case a joint before robbing it. It's burglary time, and evil Kira's wearing a Bajoran uniform. Evil Betrayal's nicked a couple of comm badges to keep in touch, so after a pensive shot to let us know he's having second thoughts, off we go. While evil Betrayal's fiddling with the lock in the shrine, evil Kira's trying to get into a cargo bay. Increased security because of the war means she can't just walk past the guard without a code she doesn't have, so she knocks him on his arse instead. There's a cargo teleporter inside, and she's carrying the gizmo that'll send her back to the mirror universe, so all that's left is to wait for evil Betrayal. He's going to be slightly delayed. Kira interrupts him after he finishes breaking the lock, Quark's comment having made her decide to keep a watch on things. The ambusher is ambushed in turn by evil Kira, and evil Betrayal grabs Kira's weapon. Teleport sensors showed evil Kira there were more people in the shrine than there should have been, so she came to check. Kira pleading with evil Betrayal not to take the orb has evil Kira saying she's wasting her breath. The reasoning of Kira and mockery of evil Kira continues until evil Betrayal gets sick of it all and poops yellow at evil Kira. She'll be fucking fuming when she wakes up, but he's persuasive when he wants to be and can fix it when they get back home. Besides, the orb vision he had, one with him and Kira having a life on Bajor, would never really have worked out. He grabs the teleporter gizmo and activates it, he and evil Kira disappearing, so we'll leave Kira to wonder why she's so unlucky in love that she's managed to lose the same guy twice, until the next adventure. We'll start this one with a bit of pedantry, shall we? It's in the job description after all, and we've not done any for a while. No, not the line from Dax about there being no ships in teleporter range, despite the opening shot showing one, and DS9 now being the home base for an entire fleet. What I'm talking about here is the landing pads. When evil Betrayal takes Kira hostage, Sisko points them at landing pad A. Makes sense, that's where we park the mega shuttles, before they crash or get kaboomed and we have to replace them. The problem is that during the journey, we're given this view of a parked mega shuttle, and it's parked in the docking port of an upper pylon. The place we were told it was, a landing pad, would be one of these things down here in the habitat ring. Now, I was ready to dismiss this as someone on the editing team throwing in a stock shot of a megashuttle, and the best one they could find was at a docking pylon. I'm sure it wouldn't be the first time the script got it right and somebody else accidentally introduced an error. Thing is, the script also says there are 57 levels between them and the landing pad. Let's be generous and assume we find this out while they're still on the ops level. The schematics from the Deep Space Nine technical manual don't have floor cross-sections for the central column, but even with the cautious guess based on the average deck height of standardized areas, it's still no more than 20 levels between ops and the landing pads. Of course, those same schematics also show half the landing pads in the wrong place compared to the actual model, so let's not put too much faith in them, but that's what we've got to work with, so we'll have to lump it. There's a further added wrinkle in that it physically cannot be the journey from ops to the habitat ring anyway. That journey is entirely down, and we see Kira and Evil Bareil climbing up. The logical answer then is that they're climbing a pylon, which would also make the number 57 far more reasonable, all of which implies the script wasn't going to a landing pad either. Does any of that matter in the bigger picture? Not really, if we're being honest, and the longer journey to a pylon makes more sense in the context of Kira mining him for information. It's just a little odd that nobody picked up on it, especially when the term landing pad is one we've been using since the pilot episode. To the plot then, and a quick look at IMDb shows it's not particularly popular, a conclusion with which I agree. How unpopular? Well, its current rating is 1 decimal point lower than Move Along Home. Ira Stephen Bear thinks this is because any normal DS9 story was going to be compared unfavourably to the 6-part Dominion arc, and to be fair to him, there might be some truth in that. But Nana Visitor herself isn't a fan either, and says much of Kira's behaviour here is out of established character. To be generous, we've just had an episode about not choosing who you love, so the story is at least in keeping with that idea. I don't think that's enough to carry it on its own though, and that's a shame because we did have another way to make this work. One that I believe would have been significantly more convincing, one which opens up far more questions on the concepts of personal motivation and outside influence, and one which was given to us by the show itself 3 years ago. If you cast your mind back to episode 2 of season 2, you'll recall that Bareil was the subject of a sexy times orb vision for Kira. Or was he? Did we really see a vision of the man who would become Robo-Monk, or were the prophets looking at someone else? Those tricksy prophets live outside of time after all, so they're already 1 dimension removed from us. It's not really that much of a stretch then to believe they see into other dimensions as well. If Kira had recalled this interaction, it would have reframed a lot of how she behaves, wouldn't it? We know the emphasis placed on the importance of orb visions as it was the excuse we used to boot Shakaar, so I can imagine the pull here if we'd brought it up. You could even argue that the possibility of her past vision being about evil Bareil, or both Bareils for that matter, makes things more appealing to her. Such convoluted twists might be exactly the sort of thing a believer would see as a particularly insightful interpretation. This direction would have put us in the realms of questioning free will and self-fulfilling prophecies, as well as making Kira's actions significantly more understandable. If anybody's going to have their behaviour swayed by a splash of religion, it's Kira. I don't like judging a story for what it isn't rather than what it is, as the whole idea seems rather mean-spirited. There's a video game called Prison Architect that I recall somebody insulting because it didn't cover the psychology of prison design, despite the developers specifically saying they weren't going to do this. The unfairness of that judgment has stuck with me ever since, a bit like negatively reviewing a Super Mario Bros. Game because the Mushroom Kingdom doesn't accurately simulate a mycelial network. Anywho, despite this hesitation, I confess to being a touch disappointed that the episode didn't mention Kira's previous orb vision. That lack of a mention is doubly disappointing when the episode revolves around a plot to steal an orb, so we're already broaching the topic. It's triply disappointing when you realise the orb he's trying to nick, the orb of prophecy and change, is exactly the same one that gave Kira her vision of Bareil's sexy times 3 years back. The two plots are, in a very real and literal sense, directly connected. As much as I try not to judge episodes based on what they aren't, I can't help but think this would all have tied together very neatly indeed. We'd have been given far more to think about in terms of theme, whilst also doing much to cover that question of Kira's behaviour. Enough with the negativity then, and let's try to find a silver lining. Quark dropping a warning to Kira about evil Bareil's potentially larcenous behaviour might feel out of character on the surface, so let's look a little deeper. Would Quark have gone through with the Vedek Bareil con? Absolutely, and with not a single second of hesitation. People get something they want, even if it isn't technically real, and he earns a packet. It's a lie, but one he could argue is actually making people happy. Ignoring the shrine being robbed, though, the taking of something he knows would cause significant harm to the entirety of Bajor, that's something he wants to stop. Maybe he'll tell himself that he's earning some goodwill with Kira, credit he can spend on his own dodgy shit later. Maybe he thinks such an act will put Odo off guard for the next con. Maybe he'll call it revenge for evil Bareil turning him down. He'll probably believe those things are the reasons, and that might even be half of the truth, but not the whole truth, I think. Losing the orb permanently crosses a line for him, even if Quark's convinced himself that line is just professional disapproval at evil Bareil not finding a better con. End of episode.
Okay, so what have we learned from our little experiment?
Internet traffic hurts as much as physical traffic.
That's certainly a data point, but not the most important one.
As the one gathering that data, I confess I disagree with your conclusions.
The important data point is that we've learned getting hit by internet traffic doesn't kill you.
You did see what happened to my legs, didn't you?
Yes, and then you were fine again. I can't say I entirely understand why, but if I had to guess, I'd say you reverted to a backup of your data.
So why can I still remember the pain?
Because it's funny?
Typical.
It's also probably part of the O'Brien law.
There's no point in suffering if it don't leave a mark, you mean?
Yep, that's the one. Anyway, we still need to figure out a way to flag down a search engine.
Not to be obvious, but have we tried just asking for one?
Well, that's clearly not going to work. That's about as likely as somebody announcing a new Star Trek Voyager game in 2025.
What we got to lose? Excuse me, may I have a search engine, please?
Bugger me. Woof.